At 72 years old, Agnes had seen a lot of life from her small cottage window. The world outside had changed so much, growing louder and faster, but her garden remained her constant, peaceful sanctuary. Each flower, each weed, was a familiar friend. But recently, a deep ache had settled into her bones, making it harder and harder to kneel, to dig, to prune. Her hands, once so nimble, now struggled to grip the trowel. The garden, her pride and joy, was slowly succumbing to neglect, its vibrant colors fading under a blanket of unruly weeds. It broke her heart to see it this way. One afternoon, sitting by her window with a cup of tea, she saw a young man working in her neighbor's yard. He moved with a strength and purpose she remembered from her own youth. He was Leo, a local gardener trying to build his small business. A flicker of hope ignited in Agnes's chest. She watched him for a few days, admiring his meticulous work and the gentle way he handled the plants. He didn't just cut grass. He nurtured the earth. Finally, she gathered her courage and, using her walker, made her way to the fence that separated their properties. "Excuse me, young man," she called out, her voice a little shaky. Leo turned, a friendly smile on his face. "Yes, ma'am. Can I help you?" Agnes explained her situation, her voice filled with a quiet sadness. She told him how much the garden meant to her, how it was a living memory of her late husband, who had planted the first rose bush with her 50 years ago. She asked if he would be willing to help her restore it, admitting her pension was small but promising to pay what she could. Leo listened patiently, his gaze softening as he looked from Agnes to her overgrown garden. He saw more than just weeds and work. He saw a story, a lifetime of love and care that was being threatened by time. "Of course, I'll help you," he said warmly. "Don't you worry about the cost. We'll figure something out." Relief washed over Agnes, so powerful it almost buckled her knees. The next morning, Leo arrived bright and early. Agnes, excited, had already prepared a list. "The roses need pruning, the vegetable patch needs clearing, and oh, the wisteria has gone absolutely wild," she said, pointing with a trembling finger. Leo just smiled and nodded. "All right, boss," he said playfully. "Where do we start?" For the first few days, Agnes tried to direct him from her porch, but she couldn't stand being a bystander in her own garden. She put on her old gardening gloves and joined him, doing what she could from a small stool. They fell into a comfortable rhythm. Leo did the heavy lifting, digging and hauling, while Agnes, with her decades of experience, knew exactly which plants needed what. She taught him the secrets of her prize-winning roses and how to tell a weed from a precious seedling just by the shape of its first leaves. Leo, in turn, shared stories of his life, his dreams of one day owning a small nursery. They talked for hours, their conversation punctuated by the snipping of shears and the rustling of leaves. The age gap between them seemed to melt away amidst the soil and sunlight. The garden began to transform. Rows of vegetables emerged from the weeds. The rose bushes stood proud and ready to bloom, and the lawn was a carpet of perfect green. But more than the garden was changing. Agnes felt a renewed sense of purpose. Waking up each morning, she was no longer filled with a sense of dread, but with anticipation. Leo's presence had brought not just order to her garden, but life back into her home. He wasn't just a gardener. He was a friend. One sunny afternoon, as they sat on the porch sharing lemonade, Agnes looked at the revitalized garden, her eyes sparkling. "You know, Leo," she began, her voice thick with emotion, "you've given me back more than just my garden." Leo smiled. "It's been my pleasure, Agnes. I've learned more from you than in any gardening book." Agnes paused, then took a deep breath. She had been thinking about this for a while. She had an unusual request, one she was nervous to make. "Leo," she said, her expression serious, "I have no children of my own. And this house, this garden, it will be empty when I'm gone. It would break my heart to see it fall back into disrepair or be sold to someone who would just pave it over." She looked him straight in the eye. "I want you to have it. I want you to live here, to keep this garden alive, to build your nursery right here. This place needs life, and you've brought it back." Leo was stunned into silence. He stared at her, then at the house, the garden, the space where his dream of a nursery could become a reality. It was an incredible, life-changing offer. He thought about his tiny apartment, his struggle to save money. This was a gift beyond his wildest dreams. But he couldn't possibly accept. "Agnes, I can't," he stammered. "That's too much. I'm just your gardener." "Nonsense," Agnes said firmly, a twinkle in her eye. "You're more than that. You're my friend. Think of it as a partnership. You get a home and a place for your business, and I get the peace of mind knowing my garden will be loved and cared for. Plus," she added with a grin, "I'll need someone to make me a cup of tea every now and then." She wasn't asking him to be her caretaker. She was offering him a future, an inheritance of soil and roots. Leo was overwhelmed with gratitude. Tears welled up in his eyes as he looked at this kind, generous woman who had seen something special in him. He realized she was offering him not just a property, but a home, a legacy. She was offering him a chance to put down his own roots. Right there in the garden they had brought back to life together. He finally found his voice, a quiet thank you that was filled with a universe of emotion. He accepted, not as a handout, but as a promise. A promise to Agnes that her garden, her sanctuary, would continue to flourish for years to come. That spring, the roses bloomed more beautifully than they had in years, their fragrance filling the air. Agnes would sit on her porch, watching Leo tend to the new saplings for his budding nursery. A contented smile on her face, their unlikely friendship, sown among the weeds, had blossomed into something truly beautiful, a family, grown from the ground up. The story of Agnes and Leo spread through the small town. People would drive by just to admire the vibrant garden. It became a local landmark, a symbol of how kindness can bridge any gap. Leo's nursery thrived, and he made sure to name his most beautiful rose variety, the Agnes. It was a fiery, resilient pink rose, just like its namesake. Years passed. Agnes eventually grew too frail to even sit on the porch, but she could still see the garden from her window. It was her living painting, a constant source of joy. Leo was always there, not just as a gardener, but as a son. He read to her, shared his meals with her, and made sure her final years were filled with peace and dignity. When Agnes passed away peacefully in her sleep, the entire town mourned. But her legacy was not one of sadness. It lived on in the riot of color in her garden, in the success of Leo's nursery, and in the story that parents told their children about the old woman and the young gardener. Her final, unusual request hadn't been about giving away a house. It was about planting a seed of hope in someone else's life, ensuring that beauty and kindness would continue to grow long after she was gone. And in Leo's hands, her garden was not just surviving. It was thriving, a living testament to an incredible act of generosity and a friendship that transcended age. Thank you for watching.